collection or as an exhibition?
Yeah, so I would describe my blog first and foremost as an exhibition, because when I'm choosing the images to present, I'm choosing them to present in the context of the time that I am presenting them. Much like an exhibition, the way I see an exhibition is it's a particular place and time where these images have been brought together for people to look at, and then it ends and then it's over. It's interesting that I conceive of it that way on my Tumblr blog, because usually when I'm choosing images, I'll choose them in the context of like 3 or 4 day bursts or three or 4 day periods of time. So within the context of my entire blog, there are like these individual exhibitions, I would say, that are about 3 or 4 days long, where this group of images is directly related to the group of images that were chosen in that particular period of time. So in that way, I look at it as an exhibition, because in my mind, in the way I've always conceived of Tumblr, whether people are watching me or not, I have this idea that people are watching, like they're in front of their computers watching, like waiting for me to post all these images and like release this show that they then look at and then move on. So like in my brain, I envision it as I have an audience that's waiting for me to release these exhibitions. I release the exhibition, they look at it, and then, you know, after I'm done choosing those images, for me, the exhibition is over. So I conceive of it as an exhibition, but the interesting thing is, once the exhibition is over, you have all of these images that are still presented on the blog, so people can look at them anytime. Yeah. And at that point, they become a collection, because you can look outside of like the time frame that I chose these images in, and then start creating connections that I wasn't even aware of when I was creating my exhibition. You can find connections in an image. Like sometimes I will go back and look at my blog, and I'll notice that an image that I had posted 3 weeks ago has some strange connection to an image that I posted that the day that I was looking at it. When I'm choosing images within the context of the time that I'm choosing them, I definitely find connections, whether it be color connections or gesture connections, within that small time frame. But then when I expand out, then it really becomes a collection. So for me, it's kind of interesting. I conceive of it as an exhibition. Yeah. But because of the permanence of the Tumblr blog and the way that the images are presented, it inevitably becomes a collection over time. Yeah.
Okay. Do you know the May Hudson Tumblr?
Let's see. Let me check.
Okay, because this is an exhibition Tumblr, so every month a new artist is posting his image there. You see in March, it's called Kostis Fukas. I think you know him. He's really famous. And they do it since 2013, I think. And this is an exhibition Tumblr in a way, and because they are presenting artists. And because of this, I ask you, maybe your Tumblr is an artistic medium.
Yes. Yes, I would definitely say so. And I am familiar with Kostis Fukas. I was not familiar with this particular page, but I am familiar with his. Well, I say his, but I'm not sure if it's a female or male. I assumed it's a male, but I don't know. I am familiar with his personal Tumblr blog and his photography, And I have to say that his photography, I came across his photography maybe 2 years ago, and it's been very inspirational for me.
It's really kick off.
Yeah. And it's been formative for my blog too, like those type of images and that type of clarity, because originally I for my blog I wanted 35 millimeter photography, film photography, and classic or traditional, usually modern, like turn of the century paintings, because I felt like those had a very earthy but also surreal like feeling to them. But his blog, and actually your blog as well, were some of the ones that started turning me onto this different type of clarity that still fits in within that aesthetic for me conceptually.
Yeah.
But this is, I'm not familiar with this particular presentation that he has. I will have to
it's the Tumblr I sent you is from the Marina Abramovich Center or Institute.
Okay.
Yeah, and he's just doing it since March 2016 because he's focused. And every month a new artist is creating the Tumblr.
Okay.
You know?
Yeah.
So if you go to the archive, you can see it every month. Is collecting images and so on.
Okay, I'll pull that archive up right now.
I can look for it. I think it's interesting.
This is okay, so each month is a different artist.
Yeah, each month.
Oh, this is great. Yeah, that's a great project. So so they are like individual exhibitions for each artist.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, I love that. I'm gonna follow that right away and dive more into this. All right. Well, thank you for directing me to that.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Because of this, I would like to know what's the difference between an artistic medium. So I think your Tumblr is more artistic, or an exhibition medium, who is just presenting artists.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I think I would say my blog.
Or I asked for I asked, are you a photo DJ? So or an artist curator?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think I think the photo DJ and artist curator is a very applicable way of thinking about what I'm doing, because I think maybe my background in art history has informed like the curator side of me as far as understanding how to present works like in what would be like a gallery or an exhibition sort of setting.
Yeah.
So I have this artist curator side, but it's not as rigid as taking images from other people and then just presenting them. I have this holistic aesthetic that I want them to fall under. Yeah. And in that way, it is like my Tumblr, if you scroll down my Tumblr and look at the images, it's like a large painting or a large piece of art in and of itself. So I definitely am seeing myself as an artist in composing these other people's images into a larger image. And, you talked about the hyper image and things of that nature, which I definitely feel connected to. And I have that idea to create a hyper image or even just, a large piece of art.
Okay, but how would you describe your hyper image that you are generating?
So I definitely, so initially I'll talk a little bit then about how I got started, because it kind of organically evolved. Originally when I got onto Tumblr, I had a Tumblr that was under my personal name, where I was posting my own art. And I would choose, I would choose my art and present it like an exhibition and put it together. But I, had these connections with like the whole where I was like putting certain pieces next to one another. And it was like, the idea then was to present my art. At that point in time, this was probably about 2012, 2011, I was very interested I had just finished my degree in art history at that point, so I was very interested in traditional, the human body presented in very traditional ways. And I was also very interested in nature as a piece of art. So I was doing a lot of landscape paintings, and I was doing a lot of figure drawings or figure paintings and things of that nature. So at that point, it was just like, okay, nature is cool and the human body is cool. So I wanted to pair those two together. But after that blog kind of ran its course, I started fooling around with some ideas. And this blog doesn't exist anymore, but I'd come up with a blog, I'll type it for you, a Tumblr blog called, I just came up with this idea. It was called hipsterporn.org. And when I came up with this blog, when I was at the University of Mary Washington, I was there from 2008 to 2011. It had been in the past, up until the 1970s, it was an all-women's school. And then in the 70s, it got integrated into a male and female school, or a co-ed school. But it always had this very strong undercurrent of like feminism and women's studies, and basically all the issues that go into that. So I didn't like consider myself a feminist at the time, but most of my mentors over there were, or at least were very interested in women's studies, and a lot of them were in college in the 80s, in the 90s, so they were kind of like at the tail end of that like radical feminism of the 70s, but they were taking it to like an academic level. So I got a lot of I got a lot of inspiration from women's studies and feminism. And when I came up with hipster porn, I was getting a little bit older. When I was in my early 20s, I kind of like had a lot of masculine ideals and things of that nature. I appreciated the female body. I appreciated women, but I had a lot of masculine ideals. So like, as I got older, and especially after I studied at Mary Washington, I started some lights started turning on for me in regards to the female condition and how males and females relate. And then this idea of female empowerment started becoming very strong for me, because I started really aligning myself ideologically with certain aspects of feminism. So when I made hipsterporn.org, it was kind of a...
it's not working.
It was, yeah, it doesn't exist anymore.
Okay.
I still have the domain, but it doesn't exist. There's no content on it anymore. Okay. It's just a dead link. But so when I created hipsterporn.org, it was a little bit tongue in cheek, because I was looking at the way women were presenting themselves. So I sought out a lot of female photographers that were doing mostly 35 millimeter photography, because I wanted this really raw aesthetic. And I was pairing that a lot of times with images from traditional art, whether it be paintings from the pre-Raphaelite period, particularly. Now those were created mostly by men, but there were some great female artists during that time as well. I was comparing them to works of art from the Renaissance period, from the Romantic period, from the modern period. So I was like getting these 35 millimeter kind of raw day in the life photos from different female photographers that I was finding, and putting them against more traditional paintings. And what I started realizing was that there was this like there was this spirit that was coming through both both types of work, whether was the traditional paintings or the photography. And it was definitely this female beauty, but it was also this female volition, this female empowerment, and the idea that like this is kind of a large subject, but what I started realizing was the female volition kind of overtakes the male gaze, in the fact that like by creating this image and trying to own it and contain it, all people were doing was actually just showing that the female form was liberated and in control of itself. That started emerging in a lot of these images that I found, and especially in the photography. So like at that point, I decided that I was going to mostly show women women photographing women or photographing themselves, basically just to show how talented women are at creating art, and just how empowering it is to kind of take control of your own image and present that for yourself, but then also find out where that connects to the past as well. So this idea of feminism came up very strong, especially, I mean, to make, that's a long...
It fits together.
Oh, go ahead, sir.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, no.
The connection stuff.
Oh, yeah, no, that's okay.
I think it's so great, these old artworks and these photographs. I mostly like the works from the 19th century, because the banality of the woman fits so good together with the new photographs, and the newer ones give the older ones such a beautiful meaning. Mm-hmm. It's really good.
They do, and so yeah, it's a really interesting subject, and I still haven't fully articulated it yet, but there is something about the female condition and the power of, because I believe in, there's something very powerful, and even in the old traditional paintings that were mostly being painted by men, this female emancipation still came through, and I think it was just because of the power of the female condition and the female volition. So now that women, and back then, in the past, women created art as well. We just don't talk about it as much. So in some ways, I was starting to juxtapose like those two images together, and so that was hipsterporn.org, and I started kind of like getting soured on the name, and I was like, eh. At first I thought it was really cool, but then I thought it was kind of like undermining, it had the whole pornography aspect to it. So hipsterporn.org, because there was some other stuff in there too, like I was definitely trying to present empowerment, but I was also presenting the contrast. So like there were some other images in there too that were like providing that contrast. So after that went on for a few months, that project, I actually kept all the material that was on that blog. I didn't delete the blog, and then that became Visual Ecstasies. So if you go back like to 2013, 2012, I think you can go back. I think it goes back to at least 2013 on Visual Ecstasies. The very first like 3 or 4 months that you'll see on the archives of that blog were hipsterporn.org. It just was like a seamless transition.
Yeah. Okay.
And then
it's more a collection.
Yeah. It was crazy. So I was like, there's a lot of different things going on there, and it was very exploratory. So then as Visual Ecstasies came about, I was kind of like refining it. And what I found was this female empowerment is all over the place because women are emancipating themselves. So I just wanted to provide a visual representation of all these women that I've come across that are emancipating themselves, because nobody, like, the other topic is like men don't need to emancipate women for them. Women are emancipating themselves. So here's this like blog where women are emancipating themselves. And then I maintained the comparison to traditional art, but also landscape, because I find a lot of connection between Mother Nature, as we call it, and just like the female condition as well. So I do make a point to have these connections with feminism and raw natural beauty, like natural landscape and things like that, in my current work. And as far as, in relation to men goes, my main idea is to emancipate the human condition in general, emancipate humans, or show where humans are being emancipated themselves. I don't find too many examples of men emancipating themselves in that way. Every once in a while I will, and I will post it. So there will be men on my blog sometimes, if they fit the criteria that I'm looking for. And the criteria that I'm looking for can be kind of like, it's very instinctual on my part, but I think there is a formula to it that can be found. But what it has to do with is people presenting themselves as emancipated in a very natural, pure way that is also aesthetically connected to tradition, in the fact that it is of a high quality. It does make a reference to art that's come before, and it's just a great aesthetic, in my opinion. And I've been searching far and wide, but I don't see a lot of men doing that. Now, Costas Focus is one of them that I do.
Yeah, it's true.
Presenting the male body in that emancipated way. There's another person that I follow on Tumblr as well, and I'll have to send you the link to him because I can't remember his name off the top of my head, that's doing the same thing. But so it's evolved. It's definitely evolved, but like it was a very natural progression from some of these like early Tumblrs that I had. Oh, and the other thing I didn't mention was on my original art blog 3-4 years ago, before I switched over to hipster porn, I was trying to emancipate the male body too, much like I was finding these places where women were emancipating their bodies or themselves, their spirits. So I had a lot of personal photography that I was doing back then, where I was actually trying to, if I couldn't find it on the internet, I was trying to present myself as this emancipated male. And in my mind, this emancipated male is a male that's not bound by societal conceptions of what a man should be. So it was very much within this kind of like counter aesthetic to what a man should be in popular culture. So I have some photographs of myself. Like some were nude, some were semi-nude, some were just like full clothed. And some of those made it, I think, onto the hipster porn website. I don't do that so much anymore. So I don't know if those are still out there. But if they are, they might be still out there if you really dig into the archives, but I'm not sure. I'd have to go back and look. So it's like, as far as men goes, I wanted men to be emancipated too, but I haven't found as many examples of that as I have with women. And let's face it, I tend to think that for every man that's a great artist, there is at least one, if not three, women that are great artists, if not even better. They just don't get as much coverage for their artistic merit. So, like, there are plenty of websites out there that are showing artwork made by men. So why not show artwork made by women and have it just stand on its own and not have to worry about all that other, that other context of, like, the male art world. So, yeah, I mean, I guess I would say, like, I have a lot of feminist leanings with my work, and no matter how many times, I get my heart broken in a relationship. You know, I think a lot of men start vilifying women because they don't do everything that they want them to do. I think that's stupid. That's just another piece of chauvinism, another example of chauvinism and how our society is really screwed up. So I think I really enjoy the idea of honoring women and you know, and everything that like really goes into that. I think for me it's important. Not that anybody needs anybody else's help, but for me, like, that's an important topic in the world. Yeah. So that's a crazy long answer about that.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. It's great. I love your Tumblr because of it.
Yeah, it definitely is within that idea, you know, of just putting art out there that's of great quality, that has a feminist aspect to it.
I think I don't know any male Tumblr who have this feminism aspect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't either. That's why I decided like it had to be done.
Yeah.
one of the reasons why.
But the most time you don't know who is doing that Tumblr, so.
That's true too. You never know. You never know who's behind the scenes. I mean, Costas Focus, I was always assuming was a male, but maybe she's a woman.
Yeah.
It's possible.
Possible, yeah.
I don't know Greeks. I don't know if that's a masculine or.
I think he's male. But I never asked me that.
Well, and I also find that he's not afraid. So usually with men, and this is a subject that I touched on, especially in the early days of hipster porn, I'm remembering, with men and nudity, it's very centered on a very specific part of the male body. Especially when men are presenting themselves, very specific parts. But there are not many men that like present the male body as fragile or vulnerable. And I think vulnerability, even though we think about it as a bad thing, is actually a very empowering thing.
Okay.
And I feel like I'll type that. Are you familiar with that word?
Okay. Yeah, I know. Wait, I have to try to. Yeah, okay.
Most men don't want to be vulnerable. It's just like the act of being that. Most men don't want to do that. So to make good art, you have to be vulnerable because you have to put yourself out there in a very raw or natural way. I think Costas Focus is doing that. He creates a lot of vulnerability in his work.
Yeah, but he's really performative. Or he's doing some performances. So I think it's not so...
Not so vulnerable.
And I try to use this word.
It's vulnerable. Oh, say it again.
No.
Yeah, you can do it.
Vulnerable.
Vulnerable. It's hard for me to say too, and I've had 30 years to practice it. Well, maybe not quite 30. At least 15.
I think his women are very placed in a way. So
it is kind of theatrical.
I know what you mean, but it's not. You do it in a better way.
I appreciate that. I really do appreciate that. I try to be very pure with everything I do, and it is a big part of my art to have that vulnerability aspect, and I like to have it in art and relationships, like just basically everything in my life, because it has this negative connotation, but there's a lot of freedom and vulnerability, because what I believe that word means is being yourself.
Yeah.
Being your natural self rather than putting up charades or constructs. And most people are afraid to be their pure self because they feel like they'll be judged.
But I think you also have to accept that you can't be natural the whole time, so that there are moments who are much more
artificial.
Faked or artificial, yeah.
It's true.
But that's okay, yeah.
It's very true, and that's the interesting thing about photography is like you can kind of do both.
That's true. Yeah. I'm so sorry, but I have to leave.
Yeah, no, that's okay. This has been really awesome.